So, hi, I'm Alan Chevelle. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Hi, Alan.
Really thank you for having me here. It's great to see some people that I haven't seen in a while. Great to see some people that I know that have come along to support. This book tells me, it says, we have recovered and have been given the power to help others. So hopefully in some way I can help somebody tonight. I love reading and how it works. It says our stories disclose in a general way, so I'm going to try to do that for you tonight. But I really love it when it says, if you decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, hopefully I can teach you what I've learned, what Alcoholics Anonymous has, as I'm going through my story. I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in the fall of 2003. I was brought into some sort of, gymnasium or room where they smoked. That's all I could really remember because I was a little bit jittery and drunk. My most recent recovery date is October 11th, 2013. And what I'm going to go through tonight, I did not hear until I first moved to Florida in 2018, so I find it really important whenever I get an opportunity to share is to try to bring this message that I am convinced saved my life. We do some big book workshops on Friday night at White Sands IOP building at 6:30. We do a big book workshop. I do it with my wife Kelly. We now also do a beginners workshop at that same building at 6:30 on Tuesday as well. It's led by one of our members, Sandra, and Mike, who's not here tonight. We also, Kelly and I and Jeff, we bring in a meeting to the detox every Tuesday at 7 o'clock as well. And now every other Sunday, we bring a family member and 12-step meeting into the detox as well every other Sunday. One of the things that we love and we really find important is family members. And Darren and Sandra, the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, bring it in, and it is really awesome. And you can hopefully come and check them out when they share at our meeting sometime. My story has three major chapters. Okay, the first chapter I like to call the countless vain attempts to prove that I could drink like other people. This was filled with 30, 60, 90, 30, 60, 90 consistently. I was told, just don't drink no matter what. I was told, meeting makers make it. I was told to call my sponsor every day, and that just was not enough to work for me. In fact, I collected so many chips that when intergroup needed chips, they would call me to restock them, okay? It just didn't work. I've also been to jails, hospitals, detoxes more times than you can imagine. The second chapter of my story is what I like to call my self-will run riot years. Anybody ever done a self-will run riot stretch? Okay, that didn't work out for me. I made it to almost 6 years, and then I ended up drinking again at that point. But I did learn a valuable lesson from that stretch. I learned that the problem actually wasn't alcohol; it was me. I was married. Kelly's my third marriage. My first marriage, I destroyed by the symptoms of alcoholism. Like I just drank, and the consequences, I think Dr. Silkworth says, problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve, and the alcoholic torture that I put her through ruined that. The second marriage, I was able to destroy without ever touching a drink. I sort of went to some meetings, I did some things here and there, but I wasn't like this, and I destroyed that marriage by the symptoms of myself, and I ended up drinking again after that. This third part of my story, which I like to title, as part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics. And that's really where I want to pick up tonight. About 4.5 years into this last stretch, I moved to Florida with Kelly in 2018, and I was living in Nashville, Tennessee at the time. I was born in New Jersey. I lived in North Carolina. I made it to Nashville. Nashville, we moved here. And I gone to treatment in Nashville, and as soon as I got out, I started leading meetings. I just did that. Got involved with home groups. I started bringing meetings to jails, and I thought it helped me very much. By the time I got here in 2018, I was getting a little bit restless, irritable, discontent, I ended up working at a treatment center, which was one of my best jobs ever. I loved it. And I started going to a meeting at AWOL in the morning with a guy that just sort of befriended me. And he told me about this meeting where these two guys were leading. And I'm either going to love them or I'm going to hate them. And he asked me if I wanted to go. So I said, yes, absolutely. So it was a Wednesday morning or Tuesday morning. I went to this 8 o'clock meeting, and these two older guys, one's named Dick and one is named Charles, they presented this book to me in a way I had never heard before. And it absolutely hit me. And I started to talk to these guys, and I asked Dick to be my mentor. And I ended up leading a meeting with him for well over 2 years and over 2 cycles through this thing. And it hooked me in like nothing ever did. And I asked him to mentor me, and I had asked him if he'd sit with me. And the reason I'm going to present this to you in the way I am tonight is because if even one person has never heard some of the things that I learned, it's my responsibility to try to share that within my story, because this is the only way I know how to live now. I don't know any other way than trying to teach people what's in here. So I sat down with this guy, Dick, and I asked him to mentor me. And the first thing he asked me, he says, "What is Alcoholics Anonymous?" And I said, well, you go to meetings, you share your problems, drink some coffee, you stay sober a day at a time. And he sort of gave me this chuckle. And he gave me this book, and he said, let's open up to the title page. And he opened up to this right here. It says Alcoholics Anonymous. And the only other book he used to teach when they went through this was a dictionary to give me these definitions, like the word the. Jeff, why did I need to know the word the, right? I mean,
no idea.
No, I mean, I have a college degree. I should know what that meant. But it was this discipline in going through this. And he asked me to read Alcoholics Anonymous, and it says it's the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. So we looked up this word the, which meant a, one, singular. We looked up the word story, which in this case is a factual account. There are fictional stories. He told me to look up this word how, which he told me it means precise actions taken. On the big book in page 29, it says clear-cut directions, which I really like. And then we had to look up this word recovered. And I needed to look up that word because I just always thought and heard you can't be recovered. You're always sort of going to be in this recovering state. But I looked up this word, and it meant return to a normal condition as in health after an illness. Didn't mean I was cured, but it meant I can get well. And in fact, Dick told me, this is the first major promise of this book, right here on this page, that I can get well. And he told me what I can recover from was alcoholism. And he asked me if I knew what that was. I said, yeah, I mean, you drink a lot. And by the way, this goes for drugs as well. It's drugs or alcohol. It does not matter. And he defined it as a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. We get that from the forward to the first. And he put that all together, and it hit me like it never hit me before. I had never heard Alcoholics Anonymous broken down that way. So I'm going to go through this as he taught me. And he went through this word by word, line by line. And when I sponsor, I do this exact same thing. Okay? I ended up in treatments many times. I've seen these steps many times. They're like what we call the recipe, or the ingredients in the recipe. I mean, I saw them up there, but I never really was explained how to put them together to work. I've heard the promises, 9-step, read at these meetings many times. I never knew how to get them or get to them. I've heard how it works many times, but I never learned what it took to get up to that point and how it works. So step one. Step one in here is about 75 pages, okay? Designed to teach me about what's going on with my mind and my body. And for that, I am going to go to the doctor's opinion. And I'm sure a lot of you know the doctor's opinion. If you don't, Dr. Silkworth was very important, very instrumental in getting Alcoholics Anonymous started. He taught us how deadly this was. He taught us what was going on with our minds and with our bodies once we started drinking. And we call this the grave nature, okay? And obviously, for the lack of time, I don't have time to go through all of it. But if you have a book and you want to go through it, I'm going to XXV triple I. Okay? There's a paragraph that we go through quite often that says, we believe. But I'm actually going to skip down and go through the cycle because I think I can explain this as going through my story. And many of you have probably heard this as the cycle of addiction, cycle of doom. And Silkworth starts off by saying men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And that's why I started drinking. In fact, I didn't start drinking until almost my sophomore year of college, so I was probably about 19 years old. And the reason I didn't drink growing up because I saw what it did to my family. There was no way I was going to become like them. Holidays were a mess. In fact, my dad actually ended up dying of this. My mom was an absolute monster, and I just hated everything about drinking. So in my second year of college, I did decide to take a drink. And the first time I drank, I had 2 drinks, and it was absolutely perfect. I thought, boy, this is really not a problem at all. What was I worried about? A few weeks later, I decided to drink again, and I discovered these shots, which was much easier than, they did much more to me than these Malibu rum and Cokes did, okay? And I loved it. And for some people, as they're going through this, it's a little harder to define when it is they cross that line or sort of develop what we'll talk about soon, this allergy. For me, it was right then and there, and I love the effect. Okay? I can dance with girls, I could talk to girls, I could play music, I could do anything. And I felt, for lack of a better term, like Superman. And I could just do whatever I wanted. And it really hit me hard and fast, and that's why I started drinking and why I wanted to drink. Silkworth goes on to say the sensation, meaning as I'm drinking and getting drunk, is so elusive or hard to grasp or understand. While they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. Things started to happen to me. DUIs. I made some rotten phone calls while I was drunk to people. Said a lot of bad things. But I could not see what it was doing to me, right? My mind would never think about what would happen. I would always just think about needing this ease and comfort. I never thought about anything going on. And Silkworth, that's essentially the insanity. Has anyone ever had that where you don't remember what it did to you last week, last month, whenever? And he says to them, the alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And it did. What was I going to do without booze? How was I going to have fun without booze? How was I going to play music or talk to anyone without booze? This is just my life, and I really did think that was just normal and how it was going to go. And here's a big thing that no one ever taught me. And when I'm telling you this stuff, I didn't learn this until 4.5 years into this last time that I had in recovery. He says they are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. See, I didn't know the cycle started with me living sober. Has anyone relapsed other than me? Has anyone been sober when they've relapsed? I know I used to think that was a trick question too. And I didn't know that this was my default state. Okay, with me, without some kind of solution, without working with others, without anything, I was restless. I just was never satisfied, discontent, irritable. And it had nothing to do with any problems or whatever. I mean, it could be perfect days, everything going on. But I was trying to arrange life to suit myself. Me. And if I'm in me long enough, I am going to get restless, irritable, and discontent. And that is sober, not drunk. I had almost 6 years of not drunk. You know, when I say like the recovered, that's what I want. I want to get well. It doesn't say I don't ever get this way. I do now. I still do, but I have a different way. My mind takes me to other places. Back then, it took me to just thinking of a few drinks. Just a few. I'm not thinking of blackouts and puking in jails. I just want a couple of glasses of wine like that old Italian guy in the commercials. I've had 2 glasses of wine every year for the last 60 years. That's what I wanted. And I start thinking about it again. And that thought becomes an obsession. And he says, after they have succumbed to the desire again, which is my mind and that obsession, once it was in my head, and maybe some of you can identify, it would not leave. And I would obsess. It could have been a day. It could have been a week. It could have been a month. But I would obsess and eventually give in to that desire again. And the phenomenon of craving develops. That was what no one ever taught me. Silkworth teaches us on the page before, we developed this allergy, okay, this physical allergy to alcohol or drugs. At some point in my career, my body starts to change, and I need more and more, okay? And I become powerless over the amount I take, and that was one of my things. I knew I was mentally screwed up, right? Just leaving jail and walking to a liquor store after spending 6 months for getting a DUI, I was certainly a little messed up. I just got unhandcuffed from a hospital bed, and my first thought, get a drink. So I knew there was something wrong up here. But why couldn't I control the amount I took once I put it in? He told me I have this allergy, this physical craving to liquor. And no one had ever taught me this before. Now, I'm not saying if I learned this way back in 2003, I would have stopped. I don't know, probably not, because I'm so thick-headed and thick-skulled. But I now understood why I reacted like this. I am actually different. I use Darren as one of our family members. He's one of these normal guys. He could stop. He actually stopped for his spouse, which is insanity to me. But he did. If he wanted one or two, he would just call it a day. But me, at some point, it would go in my body, and all bets are off. And it says I would go through this spree. Has anyone gone on one of them? A spree, a day, a week, a month, a year? I've done that. I wake up with a firm resolution to not do it again and really mean it. I was done. I was over. But I start getting a little restless, irritable, and disconnected, and the cycle was repeated over and over. So when I say I learned step one, that is it in a nutshell. I've got a mind that when I start thinking about it, okay, I am powerless. I've got a body that once it's in my system, and if I have either one of those, that's what it means to be an alcoholic. And I finally learned it. So I went through this doctor's opinion. I went through Bill's story. Bill's story is wonderful. I go through There Is a Solution, which starts introducing the mind, okay? And now I get to page 30, because now I want to know how to take the steps, okay? These sort of give me an overview, but I want to know, well, how do I take step one? And page 30, I find out the directions are here. It says, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. I finally learned what it meant to be an alcoholic. It wasn't how much I drank, or that I drank rubbing alcohol or Listerine, right? Or how much drugs. It was I had this mind and this body that were different. And I learned through my own experiences, through guys like Dick and Charles teaching me, and through this book, what it meant. And now I could concede. And concede means admit grudgingly, right? I didn't like it. I didn't like that I was an alcoholic, but now I knew what it meant. Now I could admit. Concede comes before that in the book. Now that I can concede that I'm an alcoholic because I learned, now I can admit it. So now I know what it is, and yes, I've conceded. And who did I concede it to? I didn't do it for my family. I didn't do it for anybody else. I looked myself in the mirror and said, okay, yeah, this is me. This is a wonderful chapter. If no one's read more about alcoholism, it talks about a guy who's been away from a drink for 25 years, drinks again, he's dead within 4. My personal favorite, a jaywalker. Who would have ever thought I can relate with a crazy jaywalker? That's me. A guy who thinks whiskey and milk is a good idea. I never tried that. So, and then there's a guy who was one of these high bottoms, right? Because we hear that, yet he still had the same reaction. And I learn on page 43, the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first drink. And my solution must come from a higher power. So now I've learned what I am, and now I learn what I need. And on page 45, because now I'm going to need this power, it tells me lack of power, that was my dilemma. Okay, yeah, everything I've done has not been working. It says we had to find a power by which we could live, not drink, which we can live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. That was tough for me because I thought I was the ultimate power. And it says, obviously, but where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. Again, no one ever took me through this book, so I didn't know that this book would enable me to solve my problem. And I don't blame people. Again, most of my early AA was in New Jersey and in Nashville, and not many people use this. But once I found out this book would enable me, I used this like nothing else. So now I could take step 2, which is on 47, and it says, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? Yes. And that's all I needed to do. And even, it doesn't say I need any sort of big understanding. If I am just willing at this moment to believe there's something bigger than me, okay, then I am set and I can continue. And for me, in my story, I always believed in God. I really did. I was brought up in a church. I wanted to be a priest at one point, okay? But the problem was, I believed I was actually bigger than that power, okay? So he wasn't going to help me with this. But if you're wondering about this higher power thing, because this is where a lot of people think, oh, AA, the God thing, the spiritual. If you're just willing to believe something is bigger than you, then you're on your way. And this chapter, We Agnostics, is all about step 2. It helped me learn and see God in a different way. It taught me some things that I never really thought about. And if I'm now willing, now I'm going to have to make some sort of decision. And we read it earlier on page 60. I'm going to need to be convinced of a few things. First, that I was alcoholic and can't manage my own life. Now that I've learned what it means to be an alcoholic, I've got a mind that obsesses and it's different than others. I've got a body that when I put it in, now I've learned that. And I know I can't manage my own life. Probably no human power could have relieved my alcoholism. I learned that because I tried. I tried my sponsor too. My sponsor wasn't able to do it. Has anyone else? Jeff, what happened to your sponsor the one time?
He became my dealer.
Okay. So, I need somebody to take me through this book. I need you all. But I can't rely on this to keep me away from a drink. I've called sponsors, but call your sponsor, I've called them with an open bottle of beer. Okay? Well, I was convinced of that, and finally that God could and would if he were sought. I always skip that last word, sought. Okay? I would always, I'm ready to turn it over. I'm ready to turn it over. Let's do it. But again, no one ever taught me, well, what does it mean to turn it over? No one told me about that. And it says, being convinced, if I were convinced of these 3 things, now I'm at step 3, which is we've decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? So someone was going to tell me now what I had to do. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So my will is my thinking, which obviously was not that good. My life was my actions, and they weren't that much better. So I needed to make this decision to turn it over to my higher power. So I've conceded that I'm an alcoholic. I know what it is. I'm not happy, but okay. I'm willing to admit there's something bigger than me out there. Now I'm ready to make this decision because I'm convinced of these 3 things. And the step 3 is a prayer. And the prayer is, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. So that's my step 3. But how do I know step 3 really works? Because it never worked for me in the past. And no one ever taught me. I need to now continue with the rest of the steps. Jeff, when do I do it? Next. On the very bottom of this page, and again, no one ever taught me this. When I do step 3 with someone, we do it on our knees, wherever we can, if they're okay with it. We come right back in and I hand them their inventory sheet and we start going through their inventory because it says next. We launched out on a course of vigorous action. And I take this like a recipe. Like, I'm not going to say, well, let's just think about this prayer for a month or 2 and see what happens. I'm sorry, I don't have time to sit around and think, because I'll be thinking myself into another bottle of whiskey at some point. So I treat this like if I'm baking a cake or something, it says add 2 eggs. It doesn't say now wait 1 week, come back and add water. It doesn't say let's wait 3 weeks, come back and stir. No, it is a consecutive thing, and I meet with my guys once a week. If they're willing, I'll do twice a week, okay? But I do this on a consecutive basis. So as soon as we come in there with step 3, we get going on their inventory. And it tells me, which many of us never had attempted, and I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, I never did it like this book. No one ever taught me to do it. I never wrote it out. By the grace of God, I made it to here. Some of my best fourth steps recently were the ones I do with my sponsees. No one ever taught me how to do this. It says, though our decision, step 3, was vital, meaning necessary for life, and crucial, it could have little permanent effect unless at once, followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom. I didn't know that. I thought drinking was my problem, but it was actually a symptom to something much, much bigger than that. On the bottom of this page, I love it. It tells me when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. Wow. I never learned that. I thought, well, I'm going to talk to my therapist. And we need therapists. We need people. We do. But I thought that was going to be the cure of it all, and it wasn't. I'd end up drinking. I also thought, let me get back to the gym. Let me run a lot, right? Let me take care of myself physically. My mind will straighten out, and I'll get better. That didn't work either. Once someone told me I need to start getting in here, wow, was that the biggest difference, okay? This book tells me exactly what I need to do to go through this. Has anyone had a resentment before? All right, a few of us. It tells me what I need to do, listing my resentments to people I hate, to people that have hurt me. I went through those. I've had fears. I had to go through all my fears. This tells me exactly what to do. It tells me we write them down. I've harmed others by what I've done and by my sex conduct, okay? I thought being in college and just messing around with every girl was just normal. No, it's really not what I've done, okay? I went through and again, no one ever took me through this until I actually learned this from these guys that taught me. So now, I've conceded that I'm an alcoholic. I'm willing to turn my life over. I've made this decision. How do I know I made the decision? Because I've done this inventory. Now I've got to do more, and now I've got to share this inventory. And on page 72, it says, having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? Now, these are about to be cast out. Everything I went, and it says, will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. And going through that, I learned the exact nature of my defects. Page 62 tells me selfishness, self-centeredness. That is the nature of my defects. That's the real root. 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-pity, and self-seeking. That's my defect. And when I went, I sat down with another guy. Actually, I didn't do it, but when I do this now, and we see this, we look, and we go through these natures. Wow. I have really been trying to run the show and do all this stuff. And this has nothing to do with drinking anymore. It's got to do with me. So I've got this. Well, how do I do a fifth step? And I love what they tell me on 75. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. People often ask, well, how long do I wait? We waste no time. I tell my guys the next week we're meeting and we're doing a fifth step, okay? We do what we can as best we can. It says thoroughness and honesty. It does not talk about being perfect. I do it as best as I can, and we get down and we get to business, okay? If they need more time, that's on them. But I stress, let's keep it going. And when I'm doing a fifth step, I take it very seriously. I've really challenged myself to ask questions, to dig back into my life, to ask them about their life, to really dig into what was going on. And it says, well, how do I do it? We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark penny of our past. And we go through it. And we go through that story. So now I've done this inventory. I've shared it with a guy, and now I've got to get into the next couple steps, 6 and 7. And when they talk about clear-cut directions, I love it. No one ever told me to do this. How do I do step 6? Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. Carefully reviewing what we have done. I'm by myself, I'm doing it for an hour, and I'm reviewing everything I've just done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better. I'm praying now, thanking God. This is clear-cut directions. Taking this book down from our shelf, and I've started telling guys, go home and put this book back up on the shelf and take it down. Right? Take this book down. It says, turn to the page which contains the 12 steps, 58 and 59. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything, for we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man. So we're going to go home. We're going to be there for an hour, and now I'm prepping for step 6. How do I take step 6? Next page. If I can go through all of this answering yes, that I'm satisfied with my work, We then look at step 6. We've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. There's a principle, by the way, willingness. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Am I ready? I've got to be ready at this point, okay? And I'm doing this on my own. Okay, can He take every one of them? And if I am ready, here's step 7. Remember step 2? I'm willing to do this. Step 3 was a prayer. Step 6, yes, I'm willing to let Him. Step 7 is a prayer. My Creator, I'm now willing that You should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that You now remove from me every single defective character which stands in the way of my usefulness to You and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do Your bidding. Amen. There's a principle of humility behind that. Has anyone else other than me struggled with the humility factor? A few of us, yeah. I need to let something bigger take this away. I can't fix a broken me, something bigger. So again, I've conceded that I'm an alcoholic. I was willing to turn my life over to something bigger. I made a decision to do something about it. I did my written inventory. I've now shared it with another man. I went home and I reviewed it. I'm willing now to let God take this away because I saw some things like, wow, I need some help. Now I say a prayer. Guess what I need next? Action. It says now we need more action, which is steps 8 and 9. I've got a list of people I've harmed. Where did I get it from? My inventory. I'm a little OCD. I like a nice, neat little list. I'll go home and rewrite it. We'll rewrite the list out, okay? And now I need to start going out, and it says repair the damage done in the past. Now is my amends process. And I love this book. It takes me through people that I hate, people that I owe money to, people that are no longer with me. It tells me exactly how I can make amends. And I've got to start that process immediately, okay? I'm not going to, again, I've heard some crazy things like do an amend a month or take your time. No. Okay, and most of this, on page 83, it says there is a long period of reconstruction. That's what I'm in the phase of now, right? When I'm at step 9, I'm reconstructing my life. Not everything is going to get better right away, right? Anyone say I'm sorry to people and they're like, yeah, okay, I've heard that before. So I can go and try to make things right. I say, how can I make things right? What can I do? And it really comes with living over time. I made amends to my dad who's no longer with me. He was in prison for almost 5 years. I wrote him a letter every single day. In doing that, I healed. I used to blame him for everything. In those letters, I realized I had a part in it all. Wow. Right? A lot of these amends came over time in living this life, but they worked. So, in the process of doing these amends, and now I get to step 10. And I love these clear-cut directions. It says, they go through the 9-step promises. If y'all heard them, a lot of you, right? We will not regret the past. We will not shut the door on it, right? We will know peace. It says they are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, right? They will always materialize if we work for them. This thought, if we work for them, brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past, not after. I've heard some crazy things like, wait till you make all your amends before we start doing this. What? Page 77 is one of my wife's favorite lines. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. That's what I'm starting to do here. That's what I am preparing for. I am doing steps 4 through 9 on a daily basis. And I know for me, when I relapse and stuff, I wasn't doing this on a daily basis. So I need to go through it. And they tell me, well, what do I need to do? It says, this is not an overnight matter. Okay, great. How long should it last? A lifetime. I need to be doing this every day, all the time. 1, I'll be my best Charles. 1, continue to watch for selfishness. 2, dishonesty. 3, resentment. 4, fear. So every day I need to watch out for those. What do I do? When these crop up, not if, because they still do, we ask God wants to remove them. So I pray. Then we discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Look at those clear-cut directions. And I know if I call someone and going to share a problem, they're going to say, did you pray first? If I didn't, they're going to hang up on me. I need to pray first and go through these. And I do this on a daily basis because I'm fitting myself for God's work. Now I get to step 11, which suggests, strongly by the way, prayer and meditation. And I started out believing in God. I am now a Christian and Jesus Christ is my Savior. My journey was not Jesus in the beginning. Now it is Jesus. And if anybody is looking for a good sponsor or mentor, whether you don't believe Jesus was the Son of God or not, I highly recommend reading him anyway. He teaches a lot of great stuff. If I take the whole Savior out of it or the God out of it, I've learned a lot from him. Prayer and meditation is a must. I compare it to like a refrigerator. If I unplug it for one day and I come back the next day, what's going to happen to everything inside it? Melted. Some of it's sour. If I unplug for one day, I'm just as that. And maybe I won't drink right away. I'll notice how I'm feeling. I'm a 7th grade teacher. My 7th grade kids will know if I don't pray right away. Right? So I do this. My routine is on my knees to start, on my knees at night. I read 86 through 88 every day. I read other books. I read an Oswald Chambers book. I read the Bible. I read lots of other AA literature. I do Bible studies with a couple of men in this room. I am doing all this before I inflict myself on the world. Right? I do this first thing in the morning. I do it throughout the day. If anyone has never prayed before or you're really unsure, 86 through 88 is the best way to start. If you're new, start it now. Right? I would recommend reading the doctor's opinion every day and start with 86 through 88 every day. It's not going to hurt. And this finally gets me to all what this is supposed to be about. Step 12. By the way, 5 chapters in this book, including the family afterwards, so I know I'm supposed to help the family. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but if nothing is going to help me more than working with others, I should be taking guys through this to get them to start working with others. If there's one thing I impress more than anything is I need to get you through this to start working with other guys, because nothing is going to help me. And when I learned this again, I was in almost 5 years, and I worked at one of the best treatment centers around. And I utilized it. Anyone who went through this with me, I would just sit with them after work. I would have groups at tables and just teach this, because I was excited. And I have been doing this ever since. Right? The foreword to first edition says, to show others precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. They said that at the very beginning. They wrote this so I could teach it. I love the foreword to second. The foreword to second edition talks about Dr. Bob and Bill. Bill had 16 days. Ebby had 2.5 months when he started helping, right? And these guys realized that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital to permanent recovery. Vital meaning necessary for life. They were helping guys in the beginning. They went from more than 100 to far above 150,000 by the second edition. They weren't waiting a year to do the steps. They were doing this, like their life depended on it. And in Bill's story, I love Bill's story. One of my favorite lines is on the bottom of 14. It says, "For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die." Nothing is going to help me more than trying to pass this on. And that's where I have found my spiritual experience and my awakening, teaching this stuff. What's a bigger miracle? There's nothing more that I want to do than teach this. I couldn't help myself other than do this tonight. I don't know any other way. I'm going to be here for people. I'm going to talk to people. But this is what I do. This is what I love to do. That's a miracle. That's recovery. And Dick said it best when I said, "Dick, how do I know I'm recovered?" He said, "When you're outside working with others, you'll know you're recovered." And I want to close with this. First of all, thank you for listening to that. When I got my first divorce papers way back when, I remember reading those divorce papers, seeing some of the things she called me. This monster, going through alcoholic torture, this selfish guy who cared only about himself, this drunk who wrecked her life. And eventually I was able to accept that. A couple of weeks ago, I got some letters from students I taught 5 years ago. One of the letters said this, and I'm reading this because this is what this has done for my life. This is what Jesus has done for my life. I've had no part in this other than trying to do this to the best of my ability. Dear Mr. Shervell, looking back on my time with you, if I had not had you as my English teacher in 8th grade, my life would be incredibly different. I'm not saying it would be bad, but you opened my eyes to what I could be, what I could do, in a way I never thought possible. You inspired me to be creative, like how you were with your music. I always appreciated the little jokes and the candy you gave me every day. You always gave your full effort to help all of your students, including me, every single day. Still to this day, I remember this one lesson where you told us about your hopes for your future when you were our age. I recognized this lesson as you were talking about your guitar career and how you became a teacher and how it was one of the best decisions you've ever made. You told us about your regrets, your successes, and for some reason it all resonated with me. And I started to realize that anything is really possible. You inspired me to be the person I've always wanted to be. And now I can say I've accomplished that. You've changed my whole outlook on learning, and I wouldn't be where I am today without you. Your encouragement and persistence throughout the years has taught me that I am who I am, and to get to the top, it's all down to me. I am capable, but it will take lots of hard work and dedication. Thank you for your patience and time, and always trying to help me in any way you can. That's the result of this, and only this. I love you all.